Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Chaz Sumners, and I'm an educational specialist here at Foundations Inc. So, welcome to our Beyond the Conference webinar series. Today, we're going to have Hillary Jones talk to us a little bit about sustainability, and I'm going to get to jump in today too, which will be really fun. But before we do, I just want to give you guys a little background information on Foundations, who we are and what we do. So we're a national educational nonprofit, and we're located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Our mission is to improve the quality of education by just building the skills of educators. So to do that, we work across the school day with after-school programs, schools, districts, states to create a brighter future for every single child every single day. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do here at Foundations, you can follow us on our social media, and I'll drop those in the chat for you. Oh, there we go. Hillary beat me to it. And so you can follow us and find out all the really cool things that we do. You might already know us from our signature professional learning experience, the Beyond School Hours conference that's held each winter. This winter in 2026, we'll be in Orlando, Florida from March 1st to the 4th. So we'd love to have you be there in the Florida sunshine and be our guests. So just so you know, this webinar is going to be archived on our website and on YouTube, so you'll be able to access it later. So without further ado, let's jump into talking about some sustainability. So, like I said, I'm Chaz Sumners. I'm an ed specialist here at Foundations. I spent 11 years in the classroom teaching special education and English, and I spent 15 years working in out-of-school time programs. So I had the opportunity to start working as a frontline staff and just sort of like build my way, like work my way up the rungs until you get more and more responsibilities, and then all of a sudden there's nobody to turn to. It's you that has to make that call, right? And I know a lot of us are in that position. And with me today is the amazing Hillary Jones.
Yeah, I'm Hillary Jones, not Scarlett Odell. We're sorry if that's who you thought you were going to get today, but I'm the Director of Professional Learning at Foundations and have had the privilege of working with the team here around sustainability efforts, as well as running my own out-of-school time programs and making decisions around what sustainability looks like for us and how we're going to approach it. And so we're going to talk about just a couple of those aspects today, really one primarily. So, Chaz, do you want to jump into what that looks like for us?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sustainability is something that I'm always eager to talk about because we all know how important it is to be able to sustain the really impactful parts of our programming beyond, what is potentially the life of our grant. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to start by making sure that we all understand the role that partnerships play in creating a sustainable OST program, right? Because the way that we make sure that we sustain those programs is by making sure there's a support, like a network of support, what we like to call a web of support that lifts up those parts of the program when the strands that are the grant funding tend to get pulled away, right? And in order to do that, we're going to look at some strategies to really deepen those partnerships. So it's not just sort of a transactional relationship, it's something much more deeper and impactful for both parties, right? And then finally, we're going to apply what we call the web of sustainability to support your OST program. And we'll talk about what makes up that web and the different strands and what those mean. And then, moving forward, we'll dig into some of the other strands, but today we're going to talk about strategic partnerships. So let's get started. So let's start with a little chat box activity, right? Let me know in the chat box what sustainability means to you and your program. How do you personally define sustainability? Like, what does it mean to you? Because it's amazing, Hillary and I have had the opportunity to talk to so many different people in so many different programs, and you'd be surprised the range of perspectives that you get when you ask that question, right? It means a lot of different things to different people. So we're curious what it means to you guys, so we can talk about it and sort of have like a collective language. Thriving. Okay, I like that. Yes. Right. Sustainability. Oh, look at all this. Okay, now I have to keep up with the chat here. Here we go. I love this. Keep me on my toes, guys. All right. Sustainability is when a system remains in place when I'm gone. Yes, right? When you can get pulled away, and we know that that thing's going to keep going. Not just you, but funding or, facilities, all types of things. The ability to keep running. That's right, Brandy. The ability to keep running no matter what, because we're running for the kids, right? So we can't stop running. Being able to meet the needs of the community within their finances and timetables. Yeah, right. Because we have to be very sensitive to what our local needs and populations are and what the local capability is, right? Because we want to make sure that our reach doesn't, out extend our grasp. Being able to withstand changes, fiscal or otherwise, without depending on other variables. Yes, I like that, right? So we have our network of supports, right? But we don't have to go like, necessarily fishing for something else and panicking because we've already done the work of the sustainability. Yeah, absolutely. Creating systems and programs and relationships that are built to last. I love that last part, Carrie, because those relationships are the things that are going to help you sustain the systems and programs, right? Thank you guys so much for sharing. Let's talk a little bit about what we mean, when it comes to sustainability in the context of out of school time programming. So, sustainability. Oh, wait, hold on. Gabby, I want to take this answer too. Gabby from Houston, being able to maintain our children's needs beyond what the government has given to us. Yes, I love that, right? Because it's great to have a framework, from our government, from the Department of Education, but we want to go beyond that, right? And then how do we do that? We do that with these partnerships, right? So when we're talking about sustainability, what we're really talking about is identifying the elements of our programming that are worth continuing and the ones that are possible to continue. Because sometimes those aren't the same thing, quite sadly, right? Sometimes there are great parts of our programming, but it's just not possible to continue them. A lot of those times we can sort of judge things, we can move things around, and maybe we can make things work. But at the end of the day, there are going to be some times and eventualities where that isn't true. But in order to minimize that, that's what these sustainability strategies are for, right? So we know that out of school time programs make a real lasting difference in the lives of youth, families, communities all across the country, right? Out of school programs are more than just a place to go either after school, before school, in the summer, things like that. They're not just babysitting. They provide a safe environment that has meaningful opportunities for growth and access to essential resources that support healthy development and lifelong success, right? It sort of levels that playing field when it comes to access to a lot of those resources. But out of school times faced really significant volatility. We all know that. I don't need to tell you guys that, right? We're all in the field doing these things. We see how it's gone, right? Um, Funding challenges, shifting policies, changing community needs. We've seen just how fragile the supports that we provide that are provided to us can be, and that's why sustainability can go. It can't just be something that we think about and we go, okay, we have a plan, we'll put it away on the shelf, maybe we'll take it. Break glass in case of emergency kind of thing, right? No. We're in the emergency, so I hope you broke that glass, right? And I hope there's something in that case. And that's what we do. We define sustainability as identifying what's, worth keeping around, what's worth keeping in that case so that we can make sure that we're still supporting the parts of the programming that we want to do. So let's talk about how what we call the web of sustainability does that, right? Because there are a number of different strands, the number of different elements that contribute to actually supporting your programming after the life of a grant. And the four main strands that we've identified are leveraging data, right? So that's talking about the need to analyze and communicate our available data to make important program decisions. So that's being able to collect that data effectively, being able to know what that data is telling us, and then being able to clearly and effectively communicate that message to our partners, to our stakeholders, right? And that's across the spectrum. That's school day partners, it's community partners. There's so many different people, and that message needs to sound different, and that data needs to be different depending on who you're talking to, right? So there's a lot that goes into leveraging data. It's not just like sort of the crunchy numbers. And then we have diversifying funding sources, right? Because programs with a variety of funding sources are the best able to weather changes, right? That just makes sense. Having multiple streams of funding available to you means that it's easier to pivot when one of those streams starts to dry up. And then we have building strategic partnerships, which we're really going to drill down on today, right? Partners with when you partner with things like local organizations, schools, families, community leaders, faith-based organizations, that gives you the cachet in your community to be able to maintain and improve what's sustaining. Because you can go to somebody who has skills in a particular area of programming that you'd like to sustain and say, hey, look, I would love it if you could help contribute to this. And then we circle back to the leveraging data. I'd like you to contribute to this because here is how it directly impacts youth. And I can prove it because here are numbers, right? And numbers don't lie. And then we have train and empower staff, right? Because at the end of the day, the staff is the backbone of sustainable programming. And sustainability isn't just a leadership responsibility, right? Every single staff member can contribute to building and maintaining this web that we're talking about through their own individual networks, through individual communication skills they might have, and through that program knowledge that they have and that we build up in them. So again, today we're mostly going to focus on building strategic partnerships because really you can't do justice to any of these in an hour, but we're going to try our very best to start like talking about what it means to build strategic partnerships. So let's do a little exercise, right? A little thought experiment. Find some paper, a little scrap of something that you can write, like jot down on. Don't worry, it's not getting graded, not a test. Make a list of all of your current partners that you can just think of off the top of your head, and then note the value that they add to your program. And then in the chat box, I'd love it if you could just share like just a description of your current partnerships. Give me like 2 or 3 words that would describe your current partnerships. And while you guys are thinking and jotting down, again, it's worth considering, when we talk about these partnerships, there's a broad spectrum of partners that we can include, right? We could talk about our school day folks. We could talk about our faith-based organizations. We could talk about a good, a good old-fashioned, like a food pantry or something like that. Like there are a lot of different organizations that we can tap to support different parts of our programming. So let's think about the ones that you're already engaging with and tell me just a little bit about them. And it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list. I know it's especially when you start trying to think of like, oh, well, who else do we have? Who else do we have? You get a few down and it'll give you the broad strokes of like what a lot of your partnerships probably, the nature of a lot of your different partnerships. Okay, there we go. All right. Let's see here. Sophia, college work. Yeah, study. All right, college work, study students. Yes, that is I mean, listen, I can't tell you how many people don't think about tapping that well right there. And that is a incredibly powerful source of, I mean, they can be volunteers, they can be actual program people. You'd be surprised. They have the time and they have the knowledge and they have the like eagerness to like really learn and be in an educational environment. Enrichment programming that introduces our students to STEAM programming at no cost to the program families. That's awesome. If you have an organization that you're partnering with that can bring in those things, that could be really powerful. Music classes, science activities, Lego robotics. Again, these are all things that organizations in your community can help you support. Dynamic partnerships, right? Yeah, absolutely, Gabrielle, because they're all always changing, right? And inclusive of our students from 4 to 12. That's I mean, especially getting younger in that like very young grade band, that's a different set of supports we're talking about. After school K to 12, yep, absolutely. Community-based organizations, yeah, a lot of them are going to, end up just being people who are already doing that good work in other aspects of our community. And all we're doing is connecting the good work we're doing, right? Nobody's stepping on each other's toes, nobody's eating each other's lunch. We're all there to do the same thing and support our youth. 100 Black men volunteer in mentoring. That's an amazing mentoring group. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's something to be said for a mentor who is representative of the population of the mentees too. And so that's something that, doesn't often get thought of. So actually, thank you so much, Gene. Thank you for that. Oh, the Children's Museum, free STEM classes from that's a great one too. Absolutely. Because there's always going to be some small little, it might be like a Please Touch museum, it might be something, but there's something that's going to be in our local area that we can tap and bring in, as partners. Awesome.
You know,
Thank you guys for sharing. Oh, what's up, Hillary?
Chaz, I was thinking about that children's museum example and from wanting to remind people that you may have partners who aren't providing manpower, people power to you, right? They may be providing a resource like many children's museums that offer curriculum or lesson plans or activities that you can use, right? They may offer free books like this
Yeah.
next example that we have coming in the chat, but they may offer some kind of resource to you as well. And those are partners as well.
That's right. Yeah. It's not just about the people power, right? It's also about like the sharing of resources. And that's a two-way street, right? Like we can also share resources with our other partners and it becomes, this amazing relationship where a rising tide is lifting all ships, right? Up the United Way for grant funding referrals, yes, right? Because they always have their ear to the ground. They know what the new hotness is when it comes to grants. Yes, absolutely.
And really, we should see our funders as partners in this work as well, because they
Yes.
are investing in it in a very significant kind of way.
That's right. Yeah, I think often we get into a habit of sort of having a narrow definition of who our stakeholders are. And I think it would really behoove us just generally to widen that definition a bit and think about everybody who has a stake in the positive, outcomes of our youth. They're stakeholders in our program, right? They might not be engaged with us, but that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about how to engage those folks, right? So let's talk about the different levels of that engagement and what that actually looks like, right? Because I mean, as great as it would be for everybody to be like deeply connected and every single partner to be infused in every different aspect of your programming, partners don't all have the same depth or extent, right? And they don't have to. Partnerships can be networking partners, they can be collaborating partners, or they can fall somewhere in between, right? So let's talk about what we mean when we talk about each aspect of that. So we're using a shared language here. So we have networking partnerships, right? So when we talk about networking partnerships, we're talking about those ones that build relationships. It's an initial step where like programs and schools establish connections. They might share information that is mutually beneficial between both parties. Here, the focus is on really clear communication and having strong points of contact. And it's possible that some of your partnerships might not progress past this level, but that networking can still be very powerful because there are some really amazing people out there who are so deeply connected to the rest of your community that when you tell them, "Oh, hey, I'd really like to be able to like partner with this other person," "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know the secretary there. Let me put in a call after lunch today and like we'll get you hooked up." You've been trying to make that call for 3 months, but it's about knowing the right people, right? So then we move into cooperating, right? Cooperating partners, they work together sort of in an informal way, right? There's nothing that's like written down, nothing that's set in stone, but you're working in an informal way to achieve a shared objective. That might be you attend each other's events, you share updates and different programming, or managing operations and logistics for each other, right? Like taking some of helping to offload some of the logistical concerns that like another program might have or you might have for your program. And then we move on to coordinating. And at this level, partners are aligning their efforts to ensure that their activities, their services are complementary. So, for example, programs in schools might create like a shared schedule. Um, they might synchronize academic supports, so we're making sure that nobody misses anything, right? Like, oh, okay, well, we'll make sure that we run club, or our clubs after, the like whatever after school sports going on, like something to like coordinate so that nobody's missing anything and it's just enriching the lives of our youth instead. Um, Synchronizing academic supports, aligning messaging to families so that we're all saying the same thing, right? Because we all have the same goal, but sometimes it sounds different when it's coming from several different voices, right? But if we all talk together about it and align that messaging, then it can be clear to families in the communities that we are working together to achieve the same goals, right? And then that sort of deepest step is collaboration, right? Um, Now this is the step where it really requires joint planning and execution of strategies, right? Like this is where we talk about having a memorandum of understanding, like you clearly do this, you're responsible for this, right? Um, Things that could fall into this category are, for example, co-designing student interventions, or aligning your program curricula with school standards to maximize impact. That one's really powerful. And that one gets you so much more buy-in with your school day partners too. Once they realize that you guys are all headed in the same direction, it all of a sudden you have teachers that are coming in and telling you about the lessons that are coming up so that oh, okay, great, I can like wrap some of this pre-teaching vocabulary into what we're doing next week so that it's we get ahead of the ball on that. Like those are really impactful things. So these are different levels of partnership, but again, every partnership doesn't need to be at collaborating, right? And they're not going to. So don't struggle and try to make them all that deep. Just know that there's value at every single level of these partnerships. And that's something that you should be looking at when you're looking at looping in other new partners, thinking about where they fall on this continuum of strategic partnerships.
I think the one other
So
thing, Chaz, is the goal's also to drive them along, right? The more
yes.
collaborating partners we have, the more sustainable our programs are. And so this also gives kind of a route of vision for how to move in those steps and how to take someone from a networking partner to a cooperating partner, and a different partner from a coordinating partner to a collaborating partner. And so taking those steps really help strengthen our program sustainability over time. And we do need those partners at all the stages, and we want to work on taking them along on this journey. And so we're ready to look at an example of a program, and then as a group, we're going to invite you all to join in the conversation of how we do this so that you can have a sense of how to use this in your own program and your own program space. So this program is called U Amplified. It's an after-school program. It's operated by a trusted community-based organization. It's housed in a community center, and it's really dedicated to empowering youth and families. This program serves as a vital resource for many working and single parents by providing a safe and enriching space for students in grades 5 through 10 from a local upper elementary school, a junior high school, so 2 schools to really thrive in all kinds of ways, academically, socially, emotionally, really in all the ways that they need to. Okay, so this is the program we're going to talk about for today. So keep them in mind. And we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the data, right? Into the program characteristics. So 72% of the parents are bilingual or non-English speakers, predominantly speaking Spanish and Vietnamese. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing that we know about the program is that families and the partnering school social worker both acknowledge growing mental health needs for the students. So that's a focus and an area where they know they need some support. The staff have shared that there's challenges with unhealthy self-expression and negative behaviors amongst students. I'm sure because you all work with youth, you can envision what some of those things might be for our young people. And then there's some math interventionists from the school who have highlighted student struggles with math skills and mathematical thinking. So the program director, when you ask them about it, acknowledges that there's a challenge in getting staff who have technical expertise and who speak languages other than English. So that's one of the challenges. So they share that students love the things that are competitive. They really like creative projects, and they do have very positive relationships with the program staff. So that you amplified kind of in a nutshell. And of course, it's not going to answer all the questions you might have about the program. But let's take a look at a potential partner and dive into what they have to offer. So, um, You Amplified is considering a partnership with Feedwell. Feedwell is an innovative company at the forefront of food science, and they're dedicated to improving the quality, sustainability, and accessibility of food for communities all over. Uh, they have a very strong commitment to both innovation and social responsibility. And they have a dedicated foundation arm. So many companies, large companies and organizations, have these dedicated foundations arms that are focused on giving back to the community in some way. And so this foundation arm has initiatives centered around healthy eating. Unsurprisingly, it makes a clear connection for us. So the foundation's giving priorities are aimed at promoting nutrition education, supporting access to wholesome food, and focusing on all aspects of wellness, not just food. So they are encouraging healthy lifestyles across diverse communities. And they work to empower individuals and families to improve their overall well being and build these healthier communities. So, keeping Feed Well and our program in mind, we want you to be thinking about networking, right? That first stage that Chas talked about. It's this initial step where programs and schools they establish connections, they're sharing information for mutual benefit, and focus on clear communication, having strong points of contact. So, with that in mind, how would you, a staff member at You Amplified, create that connection and share information with Feedwell? What could that look like? What could networking look like for this partnership? Looking for some ideas. What would it look like to network together with You Amplified and Feedwell?
I have some fun ideas, but I don't want to take anybody's ideas, so I will just say that that made me very hungry. I just...
So while you're thinking, and hopefully while your fingers are typing, I will just remind you, networking is that sharing of information stage, right? It's we have this information, you have this information. It's sharing each other's resources. Tends to be these informal connections. It could be career readiness. I'm going to argue that career readiness might be an option, but that may be a little further along the continuum, right?
Yeah, I think once we get them further down, like, the continuum, and like really make them collaborate, it'd be cool for them to come in and start talking about careers in food science.
Yeah, yeah. I love Tamika's idea of like just a conversation about what's working with other programs that are trying to care about health and nutrition. That would be a great idea. You could possibly organize some kind of networking event. I think that bringing out translators to build that connection probably looks like further along the continuum, right? This is this place with a new partner, somebody who you just met, that you're saying, like, I want to get connected. Some really simple things could be like inviting those programs to just come spend a day in your program space, right? To come see what you do in everyday programming. You could share information. Maybe they have a newsletter, or maybe they have some kind of information that they put out regularly around healthy eating. You could, if it's on social media, share it from your page. You could add it to your newsletter, right? Um, you can kind of do that easy, simple contact, low touches, right? But where we're connecting together, we're telling them about what we do, and we're sharing what they do with our constituents. So that's families, with youth, with those kinds of things, right? Gabrielle does exactly it. Sharing social media on each other's sites is a very simple networking method, right? Sharing each other's information in those newsletters, inviting them to events together, right? Perhaps having some kind of shadow day, right? If there's an event that Feedwell is hosting, Vanessa attending that event, showing up at that space, right? And building those connections, seeing what they do and better understanding it, right? Making those connections are going to be the way that we start that networking process. We're not diving deep yet. We're going to come back to some of those ideas about using our translators. We're going to come back to some of those ideas about having an event, but those small things that Gabrielle and Vanessa, both the Vanessas shared, those are those initial networking things. And if we're going to create a new partnership, and we need to be creating new partnerships to continue to build our sustainability, that's how we're going to go about it. Okay, so now we want to move to cooperating, right? This is the way to achieve shared objectives. We have common things that we want and that they want. We're not yet at the point of coordinating where we're aligning our efforts, right? But instead it's the, hey, I want this, you want this. We all want our families to be healthy and well. How can we do this together, right? So what kind of ways can we do this together? Christine said about networking, right? It's that word of mouth, right? It's those sharing those common people who know each other and building those connections, you know, as a way to build that basic trust. Absolutely. So what does cooperating look like? How are you going to move those partners that you've been networking with, you know, you've been posting each other's information, to cooperating? We're now sharing the same objectives for our project. Yeah, you're going to overlap in your mission for current projects. Absolutely. So what could that look like? What are some examples of things we might do? You know, we've got You Amplified, we've got Feedwell. How can we work together in this? You know, this is, Chaz, where some of those ideas from earlier start to come in,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like I think the problem that is that some people might have already been looking at the collaborative stuff when we were talking about networking. So they're like, all right, like, so how do I make it fit? Yeah, I think you guys have talked about a lot of this already.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the place where things like, you might have Feedwell staff come be a guest
Mhm.
speaker or presenter at a family event, right? Where you're focused on helping your program help families be healthy and well. And guess what? So are they. That's a great connection. Right? We want our young people's basic needs met, like Christine says. And so Feedwell can engage in that process in all kinds of different ways, right?
It'd be fun to have
Right?
like a family event where you loop them in to like either talk about healthy food or help provide healthy food options, right?
Yeah,
Maybe you
yeah,
do like a cooking night with your family as we move down this, like, as we move through this spectrum, right? That could be another cool thing to do.
yeah,
But that's
absolutely.
like joint planning. I'm jumping the gun.
Absolutely. It's that place where you might say to the FeedWell staff, listen, do you have people on your team who are trainers, whether they're dietitians or whatever they may be? Could they join and come to a session and maybe train your staff? Right? Inviting those families in, maybe inviting chefs to provide samples for families and sending them home perhaps with a recipe so they can cook it for themselves. Um, those are ways so far, what we've said are ways that Feed Well can benefit You Amplified. And those are very important. Are there ways that you can think of how You Amplified can benefit Feed Well so that the partnership is mutual? Because we do want our partnerships to be mutual, right? We want our partnerships to collaborate and so that the partner feels like they're getting something from the partnership as well as you are. Chaz, one of the things that comes to mind is perhaps Feedwell is looking to have a better understanding of where the needs are in the community. Maybe
Yeah.
they could interview some of your families, right? Maybe they could connect with them in um, doing a survey
Yeah, I
where
was actually
they're
just thinking
benefiting from your relationships. Go ahead.
I was just thinking it'd be cool to set up a survey where, like, if you want to find out more about food insecurity in your community, right? Like, you could partner with Feedwell to set up a survey, and then you could help distribute that survey, and then you could get a really good snapshot of what that looks like in your community. And it's a
Yeah.
way that you're helping each other, right? Because now they have also actionable data, and then they can then come back and help your families that are experiencing food insecurity. It just becomes this amazing, collaboration together. Again, not actually collaboration because we're not at that step yet, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Gabrielle says volunteers from both groups working together for a shared event. That's another example of what could look like cooperating that could hinge towards that coordinating or even collaborating, depending on how it's organized. But
Hmm.
it's certainly a way to head in that direction. Um, so, for sure, that's a way to build those cooperations. Vanessa talks about having an outside service provide the samples that's given to all these families, these communities, right? Maybe Feedwell or the educators and You Amplified provides to the parents, and maybe there's this other service that provides the food or provides these pieces so that everybody can engage in that process. It's really about, are we all getting what we need, our shared goals out of this partnership all the way around? Okay, now it's time to jump to coordinating. So remember, coordinating partners align their efforts to ensure that the activities and services are complementary. So, for example, programs, schools might create those shared schedules that Chas talked about. There might be aligned messaging to families. So, thinking again about You Amplified and Feedwell, what would a coordinating partnership look like? I'll give you a hint. One of the things to be thinking about is this is where those regular meetings start to come into
Hmm.
a rhythm. These are the places where you start to see, listen, we're working together on some kind of regular basis to plan and coordinate the activities that we're going to do.
Yeah, it's more formalized, right? It moves from the, oh, okay, well, we'll put something together too. No, 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 no. We're gonna have a meeting every 3 months or something like that. And like,
Yeah,
think about that. Think about moving what we've been
yeah,
talking about to a more formal situation.
yeah, absolutely. This might, and
Yes.
Tamiko says, this is the scope of
Yeah.
work, action planning part. Yes, this is where those types of things start to come into effect, right?
The
This is
documentation.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. This might be the place where you're starting to capitalize on if Feedwell has educators who speak different languages, bringing them in to support and engage with these families who have various languages as their home language. Evan says, like, meeting to plan the event and get it all carried out. Absolutely. Now, I
Mhm.
will say that collaborating, like the keystone of collaboration is that joint planning is where it really dives in. But this is like, hey, I'll do this and you'll do that. Maybe you decide together, we're going to run a health fair for these families, and maybe your program staff are going to do a yoga session and a Zumba thing, and right, they're going to do these physical activities because perhaps you do that during your programming and you have staff who are trained and equipped to do that. And maybe Feedwell is offering lessons around healthy eating and those kinds of supports, right? Those would be complementary events or complementary aspects of an event that really would lead to the place where you're coordinating your efforts to meet those common goals, objectives, and taking that next step in the process. Okay, let's jump to collaborating. So when you're collaborating, this is where you are co-designing and collaboratively executing the supports, right? This is where it's together and you're doing it together in such a way that those around the partnership can't necessarily tell what part you Amplify did and what parts Feedwell did, right? These are the things like if you're having that health fair and you really have collaborated on it well, they don't necessarily know who bought the food, who prepared the food, who provided the food, who taught the yoga and Zumba classes. Now, some people may know because they know, oh, well, that staff member works in our after school program and that staff member doesn't. But they don't really know where that place is. So, what could collaborating between you Amplified and Feedwell look like?
I think, I mean, again, hungry in all fairness, but I think it'd be cool to have like a cook if you had a cooking club already, like if that's what you Amplified had, then Feedwell could come in with a food scientist, right? And so we're not just talking about how we build it, we're talking about like how we cook the food, how we prepare it. We're talking about what it actually does in your body, right? Like how it nourishes you. And it's sort of like a more holistic lesson. Like it takes more of an into approach. You're sort of co-facilitating something, together.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. It's that collaborative, not just like I brought in this guest speaker, right? That may be more cooperating or coordinating, but that collaborative of we're co-facilitating it. I'm the chef, you're the food science expert, and together we work our way through this learning together. Absolutely.
Yeah. The difference between co-teaching a lesson and just bringing in the guest speaker to speak, the guest speaker leaves and then you go have a discussion about the lesson, right? Like there's a difference there, and that's the difference in that cooperating and that coordinating, collaborating.
Yeah. Yep. Those are the places where internally we start to see membership on working groups, right? We start to see shared feedback loops, not my feedback and your feedback, but that common space where there's that, Chaz just said the co-facilitation, and that communication is frequent, it's regular, it's more than, the quarterly meeting. It's that regular space where we're doing it together to reach our goals. Well, let's take a look at a different example. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to talk about how we would network, cooperate, coordinate, and collaborate together. But this is kind of a different type of partner. So in this case, Mrs. Marshall is the upper elementary school's parent family liaison, right? She serves as a vital bridge between the school and the family. So she fosters this communication, trust, collaboration to support student success. She works to ensure that they feel informed and empowered to engage in their children's education. She does this by facilitating conversation, communication between families and school staff. She helps parents who may be unfamiliar navigate the education system and then connects them with resources in the community that they need. She also organizes workshops and events to promote family involvement and works really closely with teachers and counselors to address any barriers to student learning. So, we've got our same program here, right? We have this program that, you know, is a nonprofit, right? It's a community-based organization. They function in the community center. They are not part of the school. So, how would you go about networking with Mrs. Marshall, a potential partner? I love some of the ideas from the last session, the last example, right? We're still on a food scientist, culinary arts program, connecting to weight loss or eating for health, talking about the food chain. Absolutely. So hopefully you're all staying in the chat. But Mrs. Marshall, what would you do to network her with her?
Don't get caught up thinking about like these networking opportunities being some like big or planned thing. It could be, oh, hey, look, let's sit down and meet for coffee, right? Like, something like that. It doesn't have to be any sort of big or organized thing. It's just a little chat, like an opportunity for you to start that conversation so that you can begin a relationship.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's that, hey, let's meet for coffee. Hey, I'd love to come talk to you about my OST program, or maybe you could come see it for the day, right? Come for a visit. Show up at a community event, whether it's a family night or, one of these events. If they're welcoming and open to the community, go so that you can have the chance to meet Mrs. Marshall or get to know Mrs. Marshall.
It's also worth noting that if you do that, like if you go to those family nights or whatever, these community nights, not only is it an opportunity for you to network with Mrs. Marshall, but you'd be surprised what other organizations you end up running into. Like you'll be 3 booths down from Miss Marshall, and you're like, oh, wait, I didn't even realize you guys were an organization. Hold on, you can also be a powerful partner. Not to derail us, but just something to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, with Mrs. Marshall in mind, right? Thinking about, hey, listen, we've invited Mrs. Marshall to visit, or we've scheduled a meeting with her, or we're going to show up at these community events. Um, that demonstrates support. It builds visibility, right? It shares a resource. Maybe the school needs a partner who has an after school option, who has childcare. Like Mrs. Marshall might need that flyer, right? She's working with these families to help them get their needs met. We know that the community is a space where parents need to work. And so offering your resource is a very simple way to build that trust and communication. Okay, let's go to the next one. Put your thinking brains on. How do we change networking to cooperation? What could this look like? Let's hear some ideas. Yeah, asking what are the needs from the school, right? Starting to make sure that we're meeting shared objectives with that school, aligning that can be an important part of that cooperating phase. Exploring these opportunities
Yeah.
to engage at different school day events, right? It can be these opportunities to, hey, if you're having a club fair, our after school program could show up. If we're having a family event, we could do something, right? We could share these things. It's more of that showing up at events. It's sharing digital printed materials with Mrs. Marshall that she can share with families. You could even invite Mrs. Marshall to use your OST space, right? Because we know they're a community-based organization, for a family workshop or a resource fair, right? That's what that cooperating space can look like. So we've got some great examples in there in the chat from our audience. Okay, on to coordinating. What does coordinating with Mrs. Marshall look like? What does coordinating look like?
I think it'd be kind of cool to have some sort of like streamlined pipeline, right? Like where it's easier for kids to get signed up. Like, oh, okay, well, Miss Marshall's talking to some family and they're interested in OST. It's like, oh, okay, well, here's the flyer, right? All you have to do is fill this out and then like, or scan this QR code or whatever, and then like we get that information and like it's a good pipeline, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Simplifying that pipeline as much as possible. You know, maybe Mrs. Marshall can like support with the registration work, while you kind of work to make it as simple as possible for Mrs. Marshall. You know, it could be things like if Mrs. Marshall has regular themes, like quarterly themes or whatever it is that they're using to plan the events for the families, maybe you align with and match those themes so that you're supporting both those in school and out of school time goals. It's kind of like what Gabrielle says around working with her in the events, right? In making sure that those family supports are there, they're consistent. Or sharing that calendar of upcoming events collaboratively to across between both sets of families or whoever's engaged. You know, it could look like some kind of referral or communication partnership. Sometimes OST programs have a hard time communicating with families. Sometimes schools have a hard time communicating with families. What if the families that the OST program can't reach Mrs. Marshall can, and that the ones that Mrs. Marshall can't reach the OST program can? That could be a great way to make sure that everybody's getting the support that they need. Okay, next is collaboration. What could collaboration look like between Mrs. Marshall and your program? Gabrielle said this one, and I already mentioned it, but I'm going to bring it back around again. It could be not just working with her on events, but delivering those events together, right? Yes, that's it. Partnership on an event, right? We're doing supporting learning at home in partnership with the school and the OST program. Or maybe Mrs. Marshall has capacity to help determine the needs of the parents. Right, it's that place where they're engaging from both sides and with both parts of the resources. You know, it could be that because Mrs. Marshall has that connection and that partnership with the school day staff, that Mrs. Marshall can become a liaison between the OST program and the school as they create a wraparound support plan. I mean, you could have Mrs. Marshall apply for a job to be part of the OST staff. That may or may not be appropriate, right? Oftentimes, people in these parent-family liaison roles, part of their job is making these connections between the school, the parents, and the community resources. And so, yes, like maybe you're asking more than is their job. But the thing about these partnerships and their impact on sustainability is that if the after school program can't continue in the way it's currently designed, Mrs. Marshall is still there supporting families, helping them access resources, aware of what is available there in a new way. And Mrs. Marshall may know which students now no longer have an OST program to go to or don't have the same resources that they had previously and can help support them. And so, yes, perhaps we need to hire those folks, but perhaps we need to just continue to strengthen and support those partnerships while being sure that we're not taking advantage of them where they're doing a job that we should be hiring somebody to do. And that's that balance that we need to do. And that's why making sure that the partnership isn't one-sided, right? Where it's not, we're always asking for things, but instead we're asking and giving and asking and giving, right? Now, sometimes to get what we need to build that role of parent program engagement, we do need to hire a staff member to do that. I'm not debating that at all. That can be a very, very essential role. I'm just saying, if the partnership's there, right, don't let it overlay, like you said. Jump in and continue to grow it. Make sure it's supported. Make sure that you're giving a Mrs. Marshall who's going the distance and doing that collaborative work everything that you can, right? And you want to make sure that that partnership stays strong, stays healthy. So we want you to go back to thinking about your own partnerships. And Chaz is going to talk to you a little bit about that right now.
So now that we've gone through this exercise of networking, cooperating, coordinating, collaborating with partners, right? Let's take a moment to circle back and reflect on those current partnerships, right? So I'd really love it if you guys could grab your annotation tools, and just like give us a little mark for where on this continuum you feel like most of your partnerships fall. Like where are most of your partnerships at? What level are they at? We got a raised hand.
Gabrielle, you should be able to unmute if you put your hand down.
Oh, as I said, the floor is yours, Gabrielle.
Yeah.
You there?
I'm so,
Technical difficulty. Oh, there we go. Hi.
Yep. My apologies. I don't see where I can annotate on here.
Oh,
Then
interesting.
just drop it in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we got a very solid. We got a 1 to a 5 and a 5. All right, I like that. I like that. I mean, and again, what's important to note here is that it probably took time to get a lot of those from the 1 to the 5, right? It's a process. It's very like you're not really going to jump in and immediately start collaborating with somebody, right? Like particularly at that depth. You might get lucky, right? But like it's going to be a process of moving people through these levels and then like demonstrating that value to both parties, and that's an amazing thing too, because that builds that trust between you and your strategic partner, which deepens the level of interaction between the two of you. I say about a 3. Listen, nothing wrong with a 3. A lot of coordinating partnerships, I like that. A lot of wheels that are spinning, right? So you got to make sure you're talking and checking in and doing a lot of things, right? But that can be very powerful. I love that. Yeah, but there are a lot of partners. That makes sense, Tamika. I mean, and again, all of our partners aren't going to be at 5. Some of our partners might not ever get to 5. And that can be okay, right? But the goal is to move them along this continuum, right?
And like honestly, if you don't have partners at both ends, you're probably don't have the most sustainable program, right? We need those networking ones, but we also need the cooperating, coordinating, and collaborating ones, right? We need the whole thing. And if we've got, a handful of partners who are all collaborating partners, but we don't have anything else in the continuum, we've stopped doing our sustainability work. We've become comfortable in our
Yeah,
sustainability work,
that's
right?
it.
We want to always have solid but room for growth, and solid but acting towards growth, right?
Yeah, comfort is the sustainability killer, I'll tell you.
Mhm.
Like it'll get you. Oh, building solid partnerships. Yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah, no, where you're not doing the bulk of the work, right? And it's difficult, particularly when you're in these positions, right? You're like, no, it's okay, I'll just do it. No, 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 I'll just do it. That sounds great, but I'll do it. I'll get to it eventually, right? But it's being really good at developing strategic partnerships also makes you better at delegating responsibilities, right? Because because of the trust that you've built up through moving this person through these stages of strategic partnerships, that you can trust this person with that responsibility. I don't have to worry about it. They can take it. Ah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's really, Vanessa, is the place where leaning into the joint part of joint planning is the key piece there, right? It's saying, here's what I'm going to do, here's what you're going to do. When you sit down and you have those meetings, that it's not that Vanessa walks away with all of the assignment, but instead, like, okay, well, we said we're going to do these three things. Well, who's going to do this? Right? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do this part? And wait people out. Maybe give them a little warning. Listen, at the end of this meeting, we're going to divide the tasks that come out of it amongst this team. But then when you get to the end and you're dividing them, try to wait them out and see what happens. Well,
Ooh, look at
Chaz,
that time. So
I
I'd love to.
think
I was about to say, like, I didn't realize the time that we had. I'd love to keep sustaining this conversation, but we can't. This is one of the few things, the rare things we can't sustain because we are respectful of your time and we value the fact that you've given us an hour of it. So thank you all so much. And we hope that you join us for part 2 of our Web of Sustainability presentation. That'll be November 19th. And if you join that presentation, then you'll get the first limited released of our sustainability toolkit, which gives you all of these tools, which make this work so much easier. It helps keep you organized. It helps, show you what the different levels of this sustainability could look like. It shows you how to incorporate the different strands of the web of sustainability that I was talking about. So please join us. But before you leave today, please fill out the feedback form that we dropped here in the chat, just so we know how we're doing, and so that we can, continue to tinker and tailor things for what you guys need, so that it continues to be helpful and impactful for everyone. I do want to thank you guys for your time, and I do want to let you know that a certificate of attendance will be sent out to all of you within a week, who have attended live and who complete this survey, right? So make sure you fill out that feedback survey so you get your certificate of attendance. And then please join us November 19th for the next part in our series. So thank you all and have an absolutely amazing day.